than your currency. Splurging millions, buying houses like Monopoly. Fucking 9 to 5, man, the money is a joke to me. Buying cryptocurrency, my money in the privacy. I make it rain dollars.
Hey guys and girls, welcome to this week's episode of the No BS with Birchy podcast. I'm your host, Nathan Birch. This is a show unraveling the truth to the facade of the 21st century. We're now exiting the matrix and waking up to motherfucking reality. Welcome again this week, guys and girls. Today I want to talk about real estate, property investing, and real estate investing is, in essence, a get-rich, slow game. There's lots of people out there that like to make, property investing look very glossy, very flash, and cars and boats and hot chicks and bikinis and all those sorts of things. But, property itself is actually pretty boring. When I think about it, there's nothing sexy, nothing flashy, but it's very fundamental. It's very fundamental. It's crucial to how our monetary system works. Our monetary system is very well entangled into it. So, today I'm going to talk about it being a get-rich-slow game. Plus, I've got lots of questions that are, asked in from the community that I'll be answering some of them as well. So this might be a two-part video series. So just, opening up to that and letting you know. So, I guess, looking at building a property portfolio, people think, can I buy one property? I was just on the phone to someone before hopping into the podcast, and they go, can I buy a property for $200,000? Is there a property available for $300,000? What could I do with $300,000? It wouldn't buy me much. And it's like, wow, $300,000, you can do so much stuff with that. But people don't realize that, the opportunities are out there. And I guess it's because, we're born into a system, right? You get born, you go to a 12-year indoctrination camp, your TV and your media sits there and it programs you to be a good, obedient little soul and, do and consume what it tries to sell you. And then you go to a 12-year indoctrination camp, i.e. school, and which is government-funded schooling, by the way. So they're training you to be what they want you to be, not just letting you be to be whatever you want to be. It's a very big difference there. And you become a tax slave into this system. And, you just go out, get yourself a 9 to 5, go to university, take the Pledge of Allegiance for another 6 years of, paying, like you're not allowed to get debt for a house, you're not allowed to get debt to start a business, but you're allowed to get yourself into $100,000 worth of debt that you're going to be paying off for the next 30, 40 years to be more trapped and more enslaved into these institutions, right? It's kind of interesting. But everybody is programmed. I'd say that probably about 2/3 of the people that I have map sessions with, have strategy sessions with, are all of like, oh wow, yeah, well, they have this realization halfway through the phone call that, they're programmed to go, I have to earn my money from my job. The other 1/3 are probably just business owners or people that are, know that they're living inside the matrix and they go, yeah, cool, we know what we need to do. But I'd say 2/3 of people are like, wow, yeah, I never really thought about it that way, that of money and how it works. So when I'm thinking about, any of my investors' portfolios and how I thought about my portfolio when I first started, I was like, I want 50 grand a year passive income, right? I have to go and work. And the early 2000s, like year 2002, an average wage was like 40, 50 grand. I thought to myself, I have to go work for 40 years, right? To see my dad die of a heart attack and, he worked his whole life. And I thought to myself, I have to go and work for the next 30, 40 years. I'm not smart. I didn't get good grades. I failed every grade at school. And I didn't really fail, but, in the school's eyes, I wasn't fitting in their box and their system. So I thought to myself, how am I going to go and get 100 grand a year job? I'm just going to get 50 grand. So I thought to myself, 50 grand, that's okay. That'll get me by in life. But I have to sell 40 years of my life to go get that, get up, and think about it. You might have a good job, you might have a good boss, the people that you're working for, great. If you've got that, awesome, you found something you're happy about. But two things, like, would you be doing your job if it wasn't for money? And two, if you were dealing with a bad boss or a bad work environment, if you met your colleague in a bar having a drink, and I don't instill violence at all, I don't instill drinking at all or anything like that, but, I always think about it, right? If you're at the pub and someone was behaving the way that your boss did, you'd probably get in a fight or whatever, I don't know, I'm just saying that, right? The point being is that you wouldn't put up with this shit if it wasn't for you being trapped and having to pay for that. And that's where I think a lot of people's mindset is at. They're just like, okay, I have to do it. They're like too stuck here. And it's, taking it further back and going, who am I? What do I need? Where's my life going? What do I want out of life? You know, what is my life involved? Does it involve sitting at this desk, looking at the wall, doing this, 5 days a week, 50 weeks in the year, 40 years of my life? You're not getting younger, you're getting older every week, and life's passing us by and time's passing us by. Could you be doing it at the beach? Could you be spending more time with your kids? Could you be spending your time traveling? What is it that really, gets you going? And then try and live a life around the lifestyle. That's why the slogan of B.Invested is live life on your terms. What are your terms? Go live your life on those terms. So looking at, if you're working in a job, for me, I was like 50 grand a year. I just need to find 50 grand a year. At the moment, I am selling my body, my time, my soul is getting eroded for 50 grand a year. That's $1,000 a week. I need to find an alternative solution to find me 50 grand a year. And I thought 10 properties, surely out of 10 properties, rich people have properties, whatever. That was my thoughts when I first started. I was like 13 years old, getting excited by property, and when I was 17, entering the workforce full time, and 18 by my first property, I was like, that's what I sort of need to do. But looking at people are just so programmed that I have to go to work and have to perform a day's work to get $200 or $300, and then sell my time. You're not selling your time. You want to sell your time because that's what you have to do. That's all we're born with, is our ability from ourselves to sell our time. But then once you can get that income that you're trading your time for, what are you doing with that? Most people are getting that income and then they're going to buy some shit to justify themselves, cool watch, cool outfit, some gold teeth, whatever the case may be, right? Lifestyle sort of things, but they're not going, okay, well, I'm going to slum this out. For me, I was like, cool, I'll sacrifice the first 10 years of my life working up to the age of 30, and I'll work 2 jobs if I have to. I'll do whatever I have to do, but I'm never going to have to work again in my life. And I guess that's what a lot of people don't look at, is that they're not willing or don't have strategy around that side of things. Because if you can transition from selling your time to then buying assets that replace that income that you'd have to swap your time for, then you can go do whatever you want. You're free. And I guess that's why I make these funny videos for, and the podcasts, and doing what I do, because I do it because I want to do it, because I get excitement out of it. I get to talk to people and see people grow, and there's a fulfillment there, and I'm not tied to having to do anything, right? And it's there's a lot of level of self-fulfillment from that, and it gives you empowerment to be able to do the things you want. And so I guess the question is if you wanted to have that freedom, what would the cost of that freedom be? How many properties do you require? It doesn't even, I just talk about properties because properties have been my favorite go-to. It could be anything. It could be, I'll get into that in part 2, actually, what we should look at from, what other options there are. But just in a property perspective, I think, if someone wants 60 grand a year, that's $1,200 a week. If $1,200 a week and the average rent's $300 a week, well, then you need 4 properties to get you away from your job. Go buy 4 properties, go make it happen. What's stopping you from doing it, right? So for me, I'm all about assets. I see people going out and buying, and I'm not against buying principal place of residence. I've got like 3 principal place of residences that I live in, right? I have 3, that's what I feel like, right? But I didn't start off with that. I started off like really like scrapping it out and like, living like shit. But like people go and buy their house for 250 square meter block, a house with no eaves. No offense to anyone that's got one of them. They look cool. I like them. I'm like, wow, that's cool. I like a house that's low maintenance, whatever. It's got nice parks, nice walkways, whatever. But people are buying this asset that's, they're making them smaller and smaller and worse and cheaper quality, and like they might feel nice because they've got a big rumpus room and whatever. But they're selling them for $1 million, $1.2 million. I drive past these houses on the way to the B.Invested headquarters. I drive past them and they're like 1.2 for a house and land package, 250 square meter blocks. I'm like, you need to have a husband and a wife that are both stuck working to pay for that thing. It's not just, okay, you've got one income. If you want to have some kids, you can just have some kids. People have children, and then within 13 weeks of having their kids, they have to go back to work and pay for that mortgage because they're trapped into it. And I think to myself, instead of paying $1.2 million for that one house, I'd rather have 6 properties that are bringing in, say, that are 200 grand each, so it's still the same amount of value, but then those 6 properties are bringing in $300 a week each. $300 a week times 6 is $1,800. I've now got the same amount of asset that can double in value. The smaller ones can go up greater than what the bigger one can, because there's a ceiling to it, to what people can afford in the area, and the rents. There's 6 other people paying for my lifestyle, and 6 times 300 is $1,800 a week. $1,800 a week in a year is about $92,000 or whatever. Let's call it 90 grand. Literally, that's another working person's income in your family. So structuring it right, understanding how the assets are going to perform for you, looking at how the assets are really going to, contribute to your lifestyle is the real crucial part, because people just want to buy a property for buying a property, but they're taking out the fact of what the property is meant to do. And I wouldn't be buying a property ever for myself or for anyone else without identifying what is that home, or what is that unit, or what is the property going to contribute to me? Is it going to give me equity to buy the next deal? People come in and they're scared of getting equity out. They're like, I've got 50 grand in equity, but I might have to pay extra interest rate. Well, that's good, right? If you have equity, you never have to take equity out. But if you have equity of 50 grand, you need to question, how long would it take me to save 50 grand? And people go, it might take me a year. It might take me 2 years. Okay, let's assume it takes you 2 years to save 50 grand. What about having to pay the tax on that, right? So you need to earn 80 grand. It might take you 3 years to save up for that 50 grand in your pocket. And when you save that 50 grand, what is that going to buy you? Is that going to buy the same options, the same lifestyle, the same assets, the same whatever as it would this year? If you've got 50 grand equity that you could pull out, well, then 50 grand at 3% interest rate would be $1,500 a year in extra interest repaying or loan repayments, or $30 per week. As long as you can buy a new asset using that equity that's going to be producing an extra $30 a week into your lifestyle, then happy days. So it's how you go about it, how you plan for it, and how you structure that. For me, I could never, ever, ever picture working in a job. I should have a shirt, and we should get my marketing team to make this up. Let's get one that says unemployable, right? Let's have T-shirts that say unemployable, because I would be completely unemployable. And I think everybody should be unemployable, because I would never be able to fit into that little system. Just as I couldn't go to the school, just as I couldn't go, I can't sell my life. And you can't put a price on peace of mind. And, I want assets that are going to work and operate to provide me the lifestyle I need, not me. There's only one of me. I can't scale that. I can scale my assets to go and work for me. So that's just a few, cents on that. And, that doesn't happen overnight, I guess. Like, the whole topic of it is like this, real estate is not getting rich fast, it's getting rich slower in a more paceable manner. It doesn't just happen overnight. It might be that you buy 2 properties this year. It might be that you buy 2 properties next year. If you bought 2 properties a year for the next 5 years, you would have 10 properties in your portfolio. 10 properties would give someone a nice lifestyle. Someone would have a good life with that. I see people buy 10 and then they sell off 10 and they go, I've got some cash, but then that cash isn't going to survive them for the rest of their life. So it's a matter of going through different phases. And I call it in 3 different parts, right? One is the education. You need to find yourself, find out what it is that you're trying to do, find out your purpose, find out how you can get there, work out a plan, work out 10 plans, choose a plan that's going to be right, and then work along line with that strategy to get to that end goal. So your education phase is the first part. Then your accumulation phase, that's where you might go out and buy 2 properties a year for 5 years. You might buy 10 properties. You might, I know investors in 2021 that have bought between 8 and 27 properties in a year, right? And that's amazing. Like, people say you can't buy 27 properties in a lifestyle. I bet you there'd be some whingers out there that would say, why would you ever want 27 properties? Well, that's good. Keep working in your job and paying the dude that bought the 27 properties his rent, right? And he can live his life. The opportunities are out there, but that doesn't happen over time. Like, those scenarios that I've talked about have risk, have elements of having to push themselves. There's sacrifices, there's commitments that have happened. People don't just go, okay, I've got $500,000 today, I can go buy some properties. People don't go, I've got 100,000. It takes, the focus, it takes all the hours that you've had to work in order to sell your time for that money to get to start off with. And that's the unseen part of it. But I guess there's two different ways. Every deposit you could save up, and people go, well, it's safer to do that. Well, I actually think it's worse off saving the money, because inflation, which is a silent tax that everyone's getting taxed on, you're all starting to see about it now, but I've seen it years ago. The silent tax is inflation that is eroding your value of your money. So you can go sell all your time, and then your time's going to buy you nothing, right? That's the saddest part about it. Think about that. Your income will not keep rising. The cost of purchasing shit for your day-to-day life will keep rising, but you're stuck, you're selling your time, and then you still can't even get what you wanted to do in the future. And I think that's where a lot of people get jaded from, but they say, oh, it's the baby boomers, it's the Liberal Party, it's or whoever that's out there that they can blame onto. So greedy investors, it's like Nathan Birch that's negative gearing his whole portfolio. Imagine if I negative geared my whole portfolio, I'd be financially bankrupted. So yeah, it's people don't look at the fact of the hidden taxes that are there, that are the inflation and whatnot. And for me, I like to leverage. I don't leverage. My position's very low nowadays. I could go crazier with my portfolio. I've got a very humble amount of debt. In the early days, I had 95% loans on some properties, and I started going at 20% loans and deposits, and then I went up to I had to put down 50% deposits to buy the properties, and most of the stuff I buy now is cash purchases that I use from using the cash flow coming through and buying more assets that are cash flowing for me. I don't want that cash sitting around because it's just ugly. So, yeah, what is your strategy? And I guess it is a progression to get to that point. So I'm going to go to the second part of this episode. So, some of the questions here, I'm going to answer maybe 5 or 6 of them right now. So do you think there'll be a crash next year and house prices will reduce, specifically in Sydney? Some people, really hop to the hill. I think that we're going to see, maybe a little bit of volatility in the market, but are we going to see a house crash? Absolutely not. We're going to start opening the borders up to people, and people are going to move to this country, and we're going to need to bring in immigration. The only way for us to get through and pay out all the debts that the state has got now is for us to have more tax revenue coming through. How can we get more tax revenue? We need to bring in more taxpayers, i.e. tax slaves. I've said tax slaves and people have called me out for being racist beforehand. We're all tax slaves in this system. So we can't breed enough tax slaves. We need to immigrate more people so they can pay taxes and being a slave to that system. So when we bring more immigration in, we're going to see more people earning money and needing a roof over their head and wanting to get ahead in life, and they're going to be wanting to buy properties, and that's going to put the next boom into this marketplace. So do I see that we're going to see a property house price crash? No, we're seeing everything go up. You can't even build a house anymore. You can't even get the materials to build a house. Inflation, which I've talked about multiple times, so I'm not going to go into that too much today. Everything, right? Tiles. I've just had to buy an acre of tiles. Shit, I need an acre of tiles, the biggest renovation ever. It's going to be a different video series on that. But the tiles, what I was buying last year for $20, now $31, and that's at a wholesale discounted rate. So that's gone up by 50%. Prices come down. I don't see it happening. It could, maybe little glitches in the market along the way, and no property is linear, right? Property doesn't go up forever, right? People think that property should just keep going up. Property might go up for, a year, 2 years, might go stagnant, may even go down 5%, then it might go stable for a couple of years, then it might go up and double. But in this current point, we're seeing the central banks just print so much money or currency out there, the dollars that we're using, and they're printing so much, you wouldn't want to sell your asset for a certain price. So getting that cash you don't want. So people are seeing the value of holding the assets, and that's what's pushing that asset prices up. And when we start seeing high levels of velocity of the currency that's being printed, that's where we're going to see the hyperinflation. But on that note, as far as house prices collapsing in Sydney, I don't see it. They might step back a little bit, but the market is not just Sydney. I need everyone to understand that, right? I just picked up some properties. I picked up a house the other day in a large, very large. When I say very large, I mean like a very, very large, like hundreds of thousands of people in the population in a capital city inside of Queensland, not Brisbane and not Gold Coast. It's a very large place. And the property prices that I picked up for was $185,000 for a house, but previously the houses on two sides of it had both sold for $330,000 going back 12 years ago. So this market was cheaper than what it was 12 years ago by 30%. What else can you get cheaper than what it was a decade ago? There's still markets out there because not all markets are linear, because some go up, some go down, some go sideways, and it's finding those opportunities. So Australia's bigger than just Sydney. Number two, second question is it better to buy a property under a company structure or personal? I always get asked this question. It comes across every now and then. Speak to an accountant, a very good accountant you need to have. If you need one, reach out to my team, One Path Accountants. Very, very important, One Path Accountants. Speak to them. Depends on your situation. For me, I was at like 20, 30 properties before I got buying in trust. I buy a lot of stuff in trust nowadays, but that's my position. Most of the large portfolios of 10, 15, 20 properties I see are under personal names. There is pros and cons to both buying under trust and buying under a personal name, and it depends on your personal specific circumstances. So reach out to the team. We'll put you in contact with One Path Accountants on that front. Question number three, this one's a good one. Would you say it is safe to build at the moment? Absolutely not, right? Going back about 4 years ago, 5 years ago, there was things actually was featured all over TV, and the media used to love me actually. They don't like when I call out certain things nowadays that they're putting on the media. But I used to be on TV talking about buying land. We used to go and buy bulk amounts of land, and then would get the builders and build cheap houses because they were on bulk, and specific design houses that are like personal design and not sort of just spec homes that you'd be seeing out there. And we had the opportunity to be able to get this stuff very cheap. But the problem today is that we've got a very hot market. Land has gone through the roof. What very expensive is, it's too expensive. Looking at the house prices, the cost of everything's been inflated away. As I said beforehand, just a couple of moments ago, the tiles have gone up, the timber's gone up double, triple, the copper pipes in the walls, the electrical pipes in the walls, everything has gone up so high. Inflation is so great. So the cost of building a house has gone up so high, but the cost of buying an existing dwelling is at its lowest point, right? If people say to me, I'm building a granny flat for 170 grand. I'm like, 170 grand for a granny flat? I would want a whole house for that on a block of land. If you could go and buy a house like the one I was just talking about for 185,000, where the two on either side had sold for 300,000 going back 10 years ago, would you rather have a house, or would you rather have a granny flat that's being built in the backyard and over-capitalising the property? The value is not in everything's getting inflated. Why would you want to be building stuff when all the parts of build are at the highest they've ever been and they just keep going up in price? I'd rather go buy something where people don't realise that they are selling all the infrastructure cheaper than what it would cost. So my biggest thing today, I've always talked about three things in property: below market value, upside for growth, and strong cash flow. My biggest one is now the fourth one, which is buying things that are below the replacement cost because inflation is so great. And that's something that I've always loved to look at. I'm making it a very big principle by now. Probably about 80% of the stuff that I buy is below rebuild cost. Some of the stuff that I buy is not, because it might have large land holdings, or it may be something in a blue chip location that you're buying just specifically for the location of it. But I'm wanting to buy properties below the infrastructure cost, because then no one can be a competitor on it. And if anyone wants to build around you, that will suck the price of your property up naturally anyway, and you'll have massive growth on it. So that's another area. Question number 4 today is, what do you think of the abolition of property titles? I did a section of this. I made an answer on this on a webinar, and my marketing team may want to cut that out of the webinar and make a specific video on that, because I did it specifically to put into a video. But, a lot of people now are worried about New South Wales on the 11th of October. Strange date, I know, because that was also the Freedom Day when people were, allowed out from that. On that same date, they took away the property title. So if you had a title deed to your property is worthless anymore, and you put into a digital system. There's a lot of conspiracy theorists out there, and a lot of conspiracy theory people have a lot of truths and a lot of things that they're uncovering because there's an alternative perspective to something to view. And but a lot of things are way whacked up on other sides, and just as I'd say 90% of what is in the media is whacked up, and I'd say that probably 70% of the conspiracy theorist stuff is a little bit whacked up as well, and it's somewhere finding in the middle ground on the alternative viewpoint, but that we need to be at. But people are fearful that they're going to take our properties off us, they're going to remove everything from us, we're going to be destitute, and we're going to lose our assets. I don't see that happening. The reason being is that naturally everything's going digital. But if you look at Queensland, for example, yes, that happened on that date, which is very odd that it happened on that date. Agree, but there is lots of other things that have happened for many years. So if you look in Queensland, you do not have titles. It has been digital now for a decade, I think it has. So, do I see us losing our property and whatnot? I made a full video on this, so we'll cut it out and we'll make it as a specific video. What do I think of the abolishment of the property titles? And you can watch that and get more information. So keep an eye out for that, and maybe put in a search item off YouTube. How many properties do you think you will keep you up the middle end? How many properties do you think will keep you to the up end of the middle class? I always say getting 10 properties, you're going to live a nice lifestyle. So, people can't even buy one property today. So if you have one, you're going to be better than most people in the future. But, if you're going to have 10, that's going to give you a nice lifestyle, because you're going to have 10 sets of tenants out there selling their life, earning money, giving you that money, and then you can use that money to then fund your lifestyle. So they call you a landlord for a reason. The aristocrats and the wealthy people back in the day that owned the land were the ones that were the lords. So, the larger the asset base, the better you'll be. But I guess looking at, building that portfolio, if you can have 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 properties, that's a great position to be at, and that'll keep you up with. The good thing about properties is that if you go and sell your time, like the start of this video, if you go and sell your time for money, then you are going to be constantly chasing and behind the 8 ball. If you have assets that are producing cash flow, then 2 things happen to that asset. 1, the asset rises with inflation. And secondly, the cash flow that's attached to that asset also rises with inflation. So you want to be keeping up with inflation and being at the top end. So, I don't know any billionaires that have worked in a job. So they've all worked in a job to start off with, but not all of them, but a lot of them have. But you don't get rich by doing that. So you need alternative streams, and that's what I'm going to be talking about in the second episode of this topic. I'm going to answer 2 last questions, and there's lots of questions. Like I said, there's about 30 questions here, and I'll answer a lot more of your questions in the second episode of this as well. So second last one is, will the banks lend out money for property against crypto holdings? No, I have not seen that occurring. You can leverage your crypto, however. Once again, I'm not a financial advisor. I don't go into financial advice space, so all my friends over at ASIC can go get stuffed because this is not a financial advice channel. But when it comes to crypto, there is some financial products out there that are occurring in the space which allow you to finance. It's called DeFi, it's decentralized finance, where you can actually lend your crypto, get some crypto, and then go and use that. It's not something I play in myself. Own crypto, I love crypto, but I'm not up to date with leveraging that crypto and whatnot. My position doesn't sort of require it. But I don't see the banks lending it out. That would just be equity. So that would be the short end of the answer. Number 7, this is the 7th question, and my final question for today is, communism bad for real estate at all, in your opinion? Look, that's a good question. We live in a communist world as it is. We think we're free. You've seen that your freedoms are not so freedom. But we're in a communist state. We feel like we're free, but we're not. We're free-range communist. There's a word, free-range communist. Just like a chicken, you're still going to end up on the plate. You may not have a chain attached to you, but you're still in the system. So the system is around us, right? I think it's a very totalitarian, fascist, communist system we are designed in. That's where we are. All government and anything that's underneath the government is. However, if we look at countries that are in communist regimes, it isn't the greatest, sort of system, and I don't think it's really beneficial to property owners. I think it's much better to be an investor or to own physical assets in a communist world than being stuck inside the communist system where you are enslaved and have to work in a job. So do I think we're going to get full-on Kim Jong-un style communism here in Australia? I don't believe so, but I think that there will be a big separation. That middle class, everyone that thinks that there's like poor people, middle class, and then you go up the top of the class to top class. Everybody that's there is like sort of capped at this level, right? There's a big gap already between the haves and the have-nots. If you see a nice car or a BMW or a Mercedes or whatever, how did that car get there in the first place? Generally, it's got a loan attached to it, whatever the case may be. That is a level of wealth that you see, but then there's a whole other level of wealth which none of us see. Who owns all of those boats and the yachts in the ocean? They're the sort of people that we need to be looking at and going, okay, how do they make their wealth? Where is the wealth at, and how are they surviving and all that? So in any system, you'll have, different ranges, but there's a big gap. Like I think that where people think wealthy people are at really stops here, but that's really stuck at the top end of the middle class, and you go up there and there's a big gap, a big gap for that. So, and in this system, I think, that gap that we see here, we're going to see that gap keep growing and growing, and the ones that are stuck here in the middle class are going to be less and less, and eventually the middle class will become the poor, which we're starting to see because people don't have the freedoms and choices and options and all that sort of stuff. So on that note, keep the questions coming through. I'm going to film the next part of this podcast as section number 2 of getting wealthy in real estate. If you do, need help with, building your property portfolio or building wealth or, reassessing, or want someone to have an extra set of eyes over your portfolio. Naturally, I'm not a financial advisor. We do have financial advisors that we can put you in contact with, but I guess, it all starts with having a conversation with someone. So, if you do need help, I always tell you to call me, send us an email or whatever. I'm not going to suggest any of that today. Just follow the link below, book yourself in for a discovery session with one of my team, have a conversation. You've got where you're at today. If you hang up the phone and you go, I don't want to go any further, well then go back to your life as it is. But I guess if you want to look at what are the options you've got, fill out your details on the link below, reach out to my team. My team will be in contact, book in a discovery session, and let's see what we can do to help you. If we've got poor, middle class, high class, and there's a big gap, people are going to get squeezed to this level, let's jump the fence and get on this upper level. That's what we're here for. Catch up soon. Have a great day. Bye for now.
Bilal said, man, we stuck in the matrix. This my advice, don't care if you take it. The dollar back to die, soon to be hyperinflated. This my 2 cents, don't care if you save it. Joint be decentralized and you will see you been lied to the whole time, and it's the irony, cause they do the exact opposite. You become a slave to the system, enough your money, all they do is profit. There's no conspiracy theory, you better hear me. Crypto will set you free before the system does. I don't care if you do or you don't, but what I'm saying is the truth to the reason you choke. I never been a failure, excuse my behavior. Keep talking, haters doing me a favor. They all tell lies, I know what they been telling you. I'm the opposite, the Donald Trump of Australia. It's amazing, here for the taking. My time is never wasted, just getting wasted. These girls say I'm really breathtaking. I can't help it if I really misbehaving. Everybody's stuck.